Alright, good morning everybody. I hope y'all can hear me just fine. If you can, please let me know. If you cannot, also please let me know. Seems to have been that kind of morning. Alright, you can hear me. Awesome. So, I am going to give it just a minute or two to let more people stream on, and then we're going to start with the basic core systems review for the Shattered World, what the game is, what it aims for, and how the various base mechanic works. Base mechanics. Alright, cat. Sorry, while I'm trying to be all professional and stuff, my cat has decided it's petting time. So, this is, of course, one of my co-authors. Couldn't do anything without him. That's what he tells me anyway. Doo-doo. Buttons, buttons everywhere. So, for those interested, that is a link to the character sheets that we have right now. We are in the process of updating the character sheets, just small, minor visual things. But there is that. You won't need to download that to follow along. I'll try and keep it pretty explanatory, but just in case you want to, there's that. So, I think I've delayed long enough. Give me 30 more seconds and we will get into this. I had a checklist because my mind tends to wander and I didn't want to forget anything. So, the first thing to know about the Shattered World, as far as the core systems are concerned, this is a modern fantasy tabletop RPG. If you've played a tabletop RPG before, you will recognize some things, particularly in tactics mode, which I will go over later in this stream. But, okay. So, the first thing to know about the games is that it is a classless 2d12 system. What do I mean by that? Well, in most tabletop RPGs, when you make your character, you choose the class that your character is when you create it, right? Like, I'm a level 1 fighter, I'm a level 10 wizard, I know magic missile and fireball, etc. In the Shattered World, there are no classes. When you make your character, you're given some stat points, and you put those directly into the skills you think your character would be proficient in. If you want to make the big dumb fighter archetype with a shotgun, then you put your points into ferocity, you put your points into firearms, you specialize in shotguns, and there you go. If you later decide, yeah, I really like playing the big dumb fighter, but he's gone up against a lot of occult casters and I really want to give them some stuff to counteract that, you start putting points into knowledge occult. That's it. You don't have to look at another class. You don't have to balance, okay, if I take 2 levels in fighter, I give up getting a 3rd level in rogue. No, that's needlessly complicated. There's certainly something to be said for doing that in other systems, however. So that is the main thing. Now that does lead to an interesting question. How do you level up? Uh, the short answer is you don't. You do get better at what you're doing. As you play the game, after every session, and then at predefined moments in the game, you will get experience points based on what you did, how you did, etc. You spend these experience points directly on your skills, directly on your merits, directly on your abilities. If you want to learn a new Destiny ability, narratively, you have to, find a teacher or find someone to help you unlock your new abilities, whatever. Mechanically, you spend your experience points. That's it. So, we talked about that. Now, I've mentioned checks. What is a check? So, a check is whenever you try to do something in game, you make a check to do so. Basically, whenever it would be something that would be a challenge to do. So, if I want to walk up and talk to Bob, my best friend, no, I'm not going to make you a check to do that. But if I want to convince Bob to go do something stupid, I need to make a check to convince him. So, a check in the game, whether I'm trying to convince my friend Bob to do something stupid, whether I'm trying to fight off a pack of chupacabra, whether I'm trying to skydive, all checks are handled the exact same way. You take your primary attribute, ferocity, agility, endurance, mental acuity, or resolve. We went over those when we did character creation 2 weeks ago. But you take that, you add your skill. So if we're trying to shoot at a chupacabra, we take our firearm skill. If we're trying to persuade Bob to do something stupid, we take our persuade skill, etc. We add any miscellaneous modifiers. My character has a masterwork shotgun, so I get a +1 to attack. And then we take that total, roll 2d12, and add it. So, for example, say we have a ferocity of 3. Roll 2 12-sided die, 2d12. +3 ferocity. We'll say our firearm skill is also 3. And we have a +1 from our shotgun. We rolled a 22. The opponent would roll their agility plus evasiveness plus any other miscellaneous modifiers. So we'll say their agility is 3 and their evasiveness is also 3. They got a 19. So we would hit and do damage. That brings me to what we call degrees of failure or degrees of success. For those of you that are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or similar systems like that, you may be used to critting or botching, right? I rolled a 1, I failed. I rolled a 20, I automatically hit and do double damage. That does not work the same way in the Shattered World. Crits and botches do not exist. We initially tried it out in one of the first iterations of the game. It was just too swingy. So we got rid of it and replaced it with the degrees of failure, degrees of success system. For every 6 points above or below the target number that you roll, you get a degree of success or a degree of failure. Basically, you did a little bit better or a little bit worse than normal. Degrees of failure and degrees of success, unless otherwise specified, always apply to the attacker, never the defender. Again, unless otherwise specified. So, I'm attacking that chupacabra. I did not get any degrees of success. Now, say I rolled a 25, right? That would be 6 points. That's a degree of success. My shotgun has a degree of success where for every degree of success, I push the target back 1 square. It's a small bonus, but it's one of those things that can really add up and really change the battlefield. And every weapon, a bunch of different abilities, have different degrees of success. So that is a check. One more thing before I move on. I gave an example of attacking, right? Ferocity and firearms. Sometimes skill checks aren't so cut and dry. The classic example I use when describing these at conventions and the like is from the old James Bond movie Casino Royale. There's a scene at the beginning where James Bond, played by Daniel Craig in that movie, is chasing down this bomb maker through a construction yard, right? And the bomb maker is parkour running along walls and he's diving through narrow openings, very agile. He's springboarding off one wall onto another wall, off to another wall, and this guy is clearly using agility plus athletics to navigate through the battle space, right? And that would be normally the check that we would call for. James Bond, meanwhile, is plowing through a plywood door, just shattering it as he rams into it, and he's hurling himself off this ledge and slamming into the other ledge with his side and pulling himself up through main strength and diving through a window, not the opening, through the window and shattering the glass all over himself. And he is clearly using ferocity plus athletics to navigate this battle space with a penalty. He's taking stamina damage. That is something that the Shattered World very much encourages. Anytime the narrator, myself in this case, calls for a roll, you can absolutely ask, hey, based on the scenario, my character James is just angry, he's upset, he's going through, he does not care about the repercussions, and he's just plowing. Can I roll ferocity plus athletics instead? Yeah, yeah, I like that. Okay. However, because you're not really protecting yourself, you're going to take stamina damage. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. And now you got your scene. So, when you're playing, there is very much a give and take when it comes to describing a scene. Never think that just because, okay, this is what the role is, talk to your narrator. Remember, the Shattered World is a cooperative storytelling game. It is not DM versus player or player versus DM. All of you are working together to tell a good combat related story. Or not necessarily combat related, but we'll get to that later. So, before I move on, is there any questions about how skill checks work, how swapping works, etc.? I'll give you just a minute to ask a question before I move on. The best kind. Absolutely the best kind. So, defending against an attack. I had mentioned that it's the base defense against an attack is agility plus evasiveness. That is something important. Thank you for bringing that up. So, we'll go over this more in the combat deep dive, but very shortly, for those of you that are familiar again with your OGL style games, with your Dungeons and Dragons, your Pathfinders, and the like, armor class, as those games interpret it, does not exist in the Shattered World. In those games, you would have an armor class, an AC as it's known, say of 18. And I would roll my skill to try and hit you. And then attacker number 2 would roll their skill to try and hit you. And attacker number 3 would roll their skill and try to hit you. And everybody would roll against that AC trying to hit you. And that would be your AC unless something changes it. In the Shattered World, if I'm trying to hit you, combat is distracting, combat is very quick paced, very, I don't want to say live or die, but it's kind of live or die, right? You can be easily overwhelmed. Your number of ranks in evasiveness determines how many times you can attempt to evade an attack per turn. If you get attacked more times than that in a turn, any attack after your evasions per turn is an automatic hit. So don't let yourself get surrounded. The skill check itself is agility plus evasiveness. And then armor in this game is damage reduction. So if I have an armor of 2, anytime I take damage, reduce it by 2. There are at their core 3 different types of armor in the game. You have outfits, which provide no bonus to evasion or armor, but provide other bonuses. One of them is a fire suit that provides bonuses against fire damage specifically. One of them is some very nice formal clothing that provides bonuses to persuasion checks, that kind of thing. Light armor tends to not have a real big armor penalty or armor bonus, but instead has evasion bonuses. So in light armor, you won't get hit often, but when you do, it hurts. Heavy armor is the exact opposite. It has higher armor bonuses, but an evasion penalty. You're going to get hit much more often, but you're not going to take anywhere near as much damage per hit. So it's a trade-off. And then shields work similar. Right, you just stand there looking pretty with your AC. That's how you do it in other games. That's not how you do it in this one. One of the things we wanted to do was encourage a very teamwork-based play style. Um, and that actually gives me a bit of a segue to talk about why 2d12, which I will do so in a second. But as I mentioned, if you get attacked too many times in a row, you can't defend. You're going to get automatically hit. Sometimes that's a risk you're willing to take. If you're the heavy armor guy standing in a doorway, that's your job, right? You stand there and hold the line while your allies do the damage. You don't want to just wander off. You don't want to Leroy Jenkins your way into a crowd of enemies because you're going to die. And one important thing about this, the Shattered World, when the game launches, this may change with later books, but when the game launches, there is not going to be a true resurrection spell. There is not going to be a true bring your ally back spell. Now, you may be able to communicate with them as a ghost, you may be able to raise an undead servant, but you're not going to bring an ally back. Death is something that is an important storytelling feature, and it's something that is very present in the Shattered World. Yes, contested rolls for the win. Um, I don't like systems where I can build my character and then just sit back and hope. I like being able to have a little bit of say in whether or not I live or die. So that's why we went with a contested roll heavy. Now, to get to that segue, 2d12, one of the things that it was pointed out, and rightfully so, is that is extremely swingy. Say the average person has an attribute score of 3, right? So my ferocity is 3. Or your attributes run on a scale of 1 to 5, unless you're enhanced, and then that particular attribute goes up to 6. I'll talk about enhancements more in a minute, but average is 3. Your skills run on a range of 1 to 7. Average is, 3 to 4. A competent person is 3. 4 is you've started to specialize. Say you've got some good tools, right? So another +1 bonus. So 3, 3, 1, you're looking at a average Bob the Builder has a +7 bonus. Well, I'm rolling 2d12. That means my dice can get anywhere from 2 to 24, and I'm only adding 7 to that. That is extremely swingy. Yes, that's true, and that's by design. Here's why. So, remember I mentioned earlier, this is a teamwork-heavy game. The whole point is teamwork. Everyone works together. One person, even if they are the 20-year veteran, can get taken down by a couple gang members if they're not smart and if they're not lucky. Bad luck can strike anyone. The Shattered World is a world, I don't want to say a world of darkness, I think that's copyrighted, but you get the point. It is a world where the heroes can fail. It is a world where if you're not working together, your enemies can and will pounce on that. And it does not matter if you're a veteran of going through 18 different tears. If you're not careful, sorry man, that's just how it goes. Yes, it is very much an interesting TTRPG. Get your mind out the gutter. So, preverts. You're all preverts. Alright, so we've talked about that. I want to go over for a minute the 3 modes. So when you get into the Shattered World, there are basically going to be 3 modes of play. Now, Mode 1 is called Tactics Mode. And if you've played any tabletop RPG, you know what you're getting into. That's the mode where you do combat. That's the mode where you try to convince the local mayor that your team needs access to this building for completely legitimate purposes. That's where you try to convince the matriarch of one of the local families to teach your occult specialist a ritual so that you can use it in the upcoming adventure, right? Like that's where that happens. That's tactics mode. Normally you would use a map, minifigures, the whole nine. You don't have to. If you want to go theater of the mind, you can. I personally am not a fan of theater of the mind when it comes to combat and the like, but that's me personally. Yes, seduce the mayor to get access. It is not a cute little hovel. I'm sorry, I've seen the things you say. It is not a cute little hovel. It is a dirty, dirty, dirty hovel. But it's okay, we still love it. So, professional. I am being a professional. So, where was I? Tactics mode. So that is basically tactics mode. Next up is what we call navigation mode. Now, when you go through a tear, which I will explain a bit more in depth in a moment, but when you go through a tear, it's a pocket dimension, right? There are no GPS satellites in the tear. There are no atlases, road maps, no roads. The only way to discover where anything is to go there. So navigation mode is all about exploration. Each tear, Google Maps is not everywhere, not even in our world. Google Maps is the devil. But it's a beautiful thing. But so when you go into a tear, each tear is its own pocket dimension, right? So when you go into a tear, you have to explore, and that is a team-based exploration. So when you go in, you'd make a check once per day. This person is the expedition leader. They will make a check that makes everybody better. This person is the explorer. They will be the one doing the actual exploring. This person is the hunter. They're the one trying to get food for everybody else, etc., etc. As you start exploring territories, you will find landmarks in them. Once you uncover the appropriate amount of landmarks in each territory, you have now successfully explored the territory, and then you can claim it. Once you claim it, that leads into mode 3, which is stratagem mode. Mode 3 is where, as the name implies, you prepare your strategies for the upcoming adventure. So, stratagem mode is where you would do things like craft a new gun, craft some potions. It's also where you do, settlement building. One of the important things about the Shattered World, from a lore perspective, is that the game is, or the game world, up until 5 years ago when the Helmira incident happened and the tears began opening, the world was very much locked into stasis. Yeah, some events would happen, a war here, a military action there. This family may lose some influence, this family may gain some influence, but for most people, I did what my dad did, what his dad did, what his dad did, what his dad did, right? There is no real social mobility. There is no possibility of advancement. You are what you were born to be. The tears have changed that for the common person, for the average person. again, I mentioned you go through and in mode to explore. That's land. That's a place to live where the normal rules don't exist. That's resources. That's possibility. Various organizations are sending people through to claim that land, and a whole lot of regular people, be they religious pilgrims, be they just people trying to survive, are going through. Settlement building is exactly what it sounds like. Once a territory is claimed by your group, you can start building there, assuming you have the resources to do so. You'll have to build a town hall first in order to fully settle the territory. But after that, whatever you want to build, you can. If you want to just build a bunch of farms and make it a agricultural, Jefferson style rural agricultural wonderland, you can. If you want to make a bunch of factory towns, you can. It's all what your group decides to do. But stratagem mode is where you do that. And stratagem mode, just like how navigation mode is handled through like everybody working together in their roles, building projects are handled the same. So this person is the project lead, they will make their check, which will make everybody a little bit better or worse. We all know incompetent managers at what they're doing. This person is the architect, this person is the labor foreman, blah blah blah. You make your checks, you pay your salary, and then you build it. And it takes a certain amount of time. Once the players have started the construction project, they do not have to stay to see it through. That part is handled by NPCs. That being said, it will take the amount of time. So if a building says it takes 10 days, you make all your checks on day one, and then you go adventure, you work on something else, blah, blah, blah. 10 days later, that building is finished. And then your settlement starts getting the appropriate bonuses. Does that make sense to everybody? Any other questions before I move on? Yes, essentially downtimes. Yes. It's not quite the same, but very, very similar. The biggest difference is, again, in Pathfinder or D&D, if I start a project like that, I have to stay until it's done. Which means it cuts into adventuring time, it cuts into what else. That's one of the problems I had and other people had with games like Pathfinder's Kingmaker, for example. Great game. I loved that adventure path. But you very much had to decide, am I going to be an adventurer or am I going to sit back and be a ruler while somebody else goes to adventure? With this, you don't have to. So, real quick, I'm going to go over salary because I've mentioned that a couple times. Salary, so in the Shattered World, we decided to go with an abstract wealth system. Basically, when you're doing wealth, there's two ways to do it. You can either do a real money, quote unquote, system. Yes, celery. Everybody buys celery. You put some peanut butter and then some trail mix on it, and it's fucking amazing. I love that. Uh, Salary. Sorry, I apparently can't talk this morning. Jeez. It's something. Um, yes. You know, if we could all get paid in food, that would be awesome. Everybody's giving me a hard time, not even in the fun ways. Anyway, so, um, God, I lost my train of thought. Salary. So, there are basically two types of wealth systems when you boil it down. The first is a hard wealth system or a quote unquote real wealth system where you have to track dollars, you have to track coins. A sword costs 2 gold, 1 silver. I have 2 gold, 5 silver, so I have 4 silver left, right? Like that's a real quote unquote wealth system. An abstract system is what we ended up going with. And that's where I have a wealth score that represents what I can get access to. It may be money, it may be favors, it may be gems or artwork that I can, hawk in a pinch and get some money for or use as collateral for a loan. It's assets. So, salary is what I have access to, and every 2 weeks it refreshes back to my max salary, regardless of what my current salary is at. Because, as anyone who's not a multimillionaire will tell you, nickel and dime day to day living adds up. Yes, so my name is Alan. I am the owner of Mr. Bitey's Games and Hobbies. The game we are discussing is The Shattered World, which is a 2D12 tabletop RPG. It's a modern fantasy game that we are designing. Yes, Super Destructo is one of my guinea pigs slash game testers. So I will have to pull the link back up. We did go over character creation in a previous video. However, that video is no longer on Twitch because stuff only stays up for 14 days. I do have it on our YouTube channel. Give me just a few and I will link it here so you can check that out at your convenience if you're interested. Um, Today we're just going over the basic core mechanics and how the core systems work. Thank you, I appreciate it. And if you have any questions about anything we're discussing, please don't hesitate to ask. So, let me finish up on salary before my brain wanders off again. Um, so salary in this game is an abstract system. Again, your salary represents basically your assets, what you have access to try and buy something. Um, a pistol may cost 2 salary, and you may walk in with cold hard cash. You may walk in with, hey, I'm the heir apparent of the Domingo family, and Dad would really like it if you let me have that gun. Yeah, we'll count that. Okay, cool. It replenishes every 2 weeks, as I said, and it goes back to your max. So if your max salary is 5, but you've got 4 salary left, you go back up to 5. You don't go up to 9. The reason for this is because the Shattered World is in universe. Without getting too political, it is very much a heavy capitalist system. It is designed to separate you from your money. The powers that be have control over almost everything. It is what it is. Um, hey, I'm not. Yes, I am an American, and it is an American fantasy system. We've had enough European fantasy systems. This is American. Don't want healthcare here. No, thank you. Uh, Belianadosa? I know I'm pronouncing that horribly. I apologize. Hi, yo. Anybody else I missed? I don't think I have. Yeah. No healthcare, only military. That's right. Who needs to survive when you have a stealth bomber that can't work in the rain? I ask you. Like, clearly there are priorities here. So, um, for those of you that studied history, if you remember, yay, Cybertrucks. If you remember factory towns back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, basically your boss owns your home, owns your rent, blah, blah, blah. What's that? I've decided to fire you. Well, I own your house, so you don't live there either. That system not only started much earlier in the Shattered World, it never really stopped. One moment. Hope, can you do me a favor? All right, sorry about that. So, that is how salary works. That is why your salary tends to go away. You can buy trade goods as a way of temporarily preserving your wealth in between paychecks and then selling those. However, those are now items that can be stolen, that can be lost, that can be, frankly, a plot hook of a story. So, absolutely, you can do that if you want to risk doing that. So, before I move on, any more questions? Do, do, do. All right, so next up we're going to talk about skill tags. So, when you are looking at different abilities, again, for those of you familiar with D&D and D and the like, you're used to seeing prerequisites for merits, or for spells, you're used to seeing VSM, right? Vocal or verbal semantic material. That's a similar system to what we have. So when you choose a merit or use a destiny ability or anything like that, give me one moment. I'm going to copy a merit into the chat just to give a visual example. So there is a simple or sample merit, advanced weaponry. You'll see tags, organization, Supernatural Hunters Incorporated, Ferocity 4, rookie, exotic firearms. What those tags mean is that in order to use this merit, in order to take this merit, you must be a member of the appropriate organization. So in this case, Supernatural Hunters Incorporated. Your ferocity must be 4 or higher, and you must be at least a rookie with exotic firearms. I don't think I explained rookie either. Even if I did, we've got some people that logged on after. So when it comes to skills, you're going to hear 3 tags being used. Rookie means you have at least one rank in the skill. You're a flashlight holder. You're learning, right? Like, you know which end of the gun is the bad end, but you're not quite competent. You're not ready to go out and use that on a day-to-day basis. Specialist. At 4 ranks, you become a specialist. Not only are you competent enough to do the job day to day, you've started specializing, hence the name. So I am not just a rifleman, I am a rifleman specializing in long range encounters, a la a sniper. And then pinnacle. So the best way I explain pinnacle is with performance. When we today are talking about the best composers of a particular generation, you and I may not agree whether it's Beethoven or Mozart or Chopin or Bach, but we all agree that those names are on the list, right? That's what pinnacle is. Just because you've reached the pinnacle of firearms does not mean you are the best firearms person on the planet. It does mean that when we are talking about the best riflemen, 100 years from now of your generation, your name will be on that list, even if we don't all agree that you are the pinnacle of that list. So, there are other tags. Those are just basic. For instance, if it is an ability where you must wield a specific ranged weapon or a specific melee weapon, it'll say that. If it's an ability that generates a visual effect or requires you to talk to your own opponent in a language they understand, it'll have tags for that. The tag system we're using basically for 2 reasons. Number one, it just helps organize everything a little bit better. And number two, especially when you're on PDF, being able to type, being able to hit Control F melee and find all the different melee abilities makes it a lot easier. Or being able to Control F the morning after and look for all the special abilities that the morning after get just makes it a lot easier for you to help design your character. It makes it that much smoother and easier. So, any questions about the tag system? Aww. Yeah, poor morning after. Yes, similar abilities will be near. Um, we're not making it so that you have to search. We're making it so that if you do, it's a smoother option, if that makes sense. When the game launches, so this is a 2-person team. Um, I started Mr. Bitey's. I initially conceived of and began creating the Shattered World. I later brought on a good friend, Raven, to help me out. And this is a 2-person team. We are doing everything we can. When the game launches, it will have both PDF and physical. Thank you. I appreciate that, man. Um, it will have PDF and digital copies. Our plan is to eventually have a fully searchable and hopefully better put together website similar to but better to use? Um, so I'm trying to phrase it without bad mouthing other companies too much. Basically, a better version of like an Archives of Nethys or a D&D Beyond, hopefully without, not hopefully, definitely without the microtransactions. But yeah, yeah. There's definitely going to be an index. God. And no C page XX. That will not happen, damn it. Excuse the language. I have not been playing World of Darkness games since I was a kid. Yeah. But does all that rambling make sense? I know I kind of trailed off there at the end. I apologize. All right. If there are any other questions, please, again, don't hesitate to ask, and I will answer to the best of my ability. But next up, we're going to talk about Destiny abilities. So, very simply, Destiny abilities are the spells of the Shattered World. So, when you create your character, Destiny abilities, you choose one. Destiny abilities are divided into 12 categories when the game launches. As more books come out, there will be more categories. Each one of the categories is based around one of the major arcana of the tarot. So the Strength Destiny, the Fool Destiny, the Tower Destiny, etc. Each Destiny group has abilities based around that tarot card. So, the Magician Destiny, for example, has a bunch of magical-ish abilities. One of the things in the Shattered World, which I've gone over in other videos, but one of the things in the Shattered World, the world itself is modern fantasy. What that means is uh, everybody's human. There are skyscrapers and cell phones and books and telecomputer, whatever, right? Like technology we're used to. But there's also magic. Now, magic in the Shattered World is bloodline based. Again, for the D&D familiar, think sorcerer, not wizard. You can't just wake up one morning and decide I'm going to go to school and become a wizard. It's my parents were masters of flame magic. I have flame magic. My parents were golem crafters. I am a golem crafter. I may do my magic a little bit different from them, but in the end, my magic is their magic, is my grandparents' magic, etc. Almost everyone in the world had magic prior to the Helmira incident. Um, but when I say I have magic, for 99% of people it was I have magic. If I break my ankle, it heals in 5 weeks instead of 6. Or I have magic. I instinctively know how much spice to put into that curry to make it great, even if I've never made the recipe before. Very low level cantrip stuff. True, what we consider magic, like I'm hurling fireballs, that is extremely rare, and only the most powerful of families, capital F, have that kind of ability. The Helmira incident not only created the tears, um, the tears, I will go over more in a few, but the tears have a very special property. Number one, they have a couple special properties. So, number one, Whenever a tear opens, creatures start appearing nearby, supernatural entities. Now, no one knows if they're being created by the tears, if they're being summoned by the tears. Uchiha. I'm not familiar with that term. Is that a Naruto thing? Um, no one knows if the things are being summoned by the tears, created by the tears, if they're coming through the tears. Ah. Yeah, Naruto is one of those anime I never really caught. It was that weird in-between generation for me, right? Like I grew up on a lot of the older stuff, so a lot of Fist of the North Star, a lot of Demon City Shinjuku, Ninja Scroll, Ghost in the Shell, and then I had a time period where I just did not have time to watch anime, and then I got back into it. So Naruto, I'm like vaguely familiar of, but yeah, from what I understand, it's similar. Or another one is Avatar, from my understanding. Um, if you're part of the Fire Nation, you know fire magic. If you're part of the Earth Nation, you know earth. I'm sorry, bending, not magic. Similar principle. Um, but that's one property of the tears, right? These supernatural entities tend to congeal around it. That puts a lot of normal people in danger because again, I am just a dude. Um, I am not going to throw down with a chupacabra or a dragon. Just because I know magic, boy, my ankle heals in 5 weeks instead of six. That'll let me ninja kick the dragon, right? Like, no, doesn't work that way. Second, we already talked about you can go through a tear once it's stabilized, and then there's the pocket dimension on the other side. Number three, and here's the important thing. If you're exposed to a tear, you may, it's not guaranteed, but you may become what is known in game as enhanced, basically a player character. When these tears first started appearing, the enhanced were known as the infected. Because if you become enhanced, you are cut off from magic as it is understood in the world. It did not matter how strong you were. You could have been the Shattered Worlds version of Harry Dresden and Gandalf and Voldemort and uh, Agnes Nutter and whatever other spellcaster you can think of, all thrown in a blender and mixed together, right? You could have been the guy. I'm sorry, you're a level 1 peasant now, deal with it. This has led to a lot of fear in the Shattered World. Again, everything is in stasis, right? Family feuds in our world are a thing. Imagine in this world where your identity is tied to your family line and how far you can go in society is tied directly to your family name and your family line. If, say, my family and your family have been feuding for generations and a tear opens up in your pool house and now the heir apparent, your firstborn, is now enhanced and no longer has access to magic. Now imagine a rumor starts that I have found a way to control tears and force them to open somewhere. What does that do? That's a lot of fear, a lot of scare. It leads to a lot of fun things. But After a little bit of time, the destiny abilities were discovered, and they are something that only um only enhanced can use. Okay, cat. All right, so they are something that only enhanced can use. Each, as I said, each destiny ability has different ones. For example, the starting destinies are going to be the Lovers, which tends to focus on buffing and healing one ally at a time, or buffing or debuffing one enemy at the time. The World, which tends to focus on things like crowd control. The Tower, which tends to focus on access, on one massive cataclysmic strike, and then things like firing from barricades. You've got Judgment, which has a mix of abilities reminiscent of a paladin or a bard in other games. So a lot of smite, a lot of using music to buff your allies and enemies, things like that. You have Strength, which really shouldn't need any explanation. Um, Raven, your question first. You can throw fireballs with abilities. Burning Air from the Magician Destiny is probably the closest fireball-esque ability that we have. And then there are also things like flamethrowers. Can you seduce dragons in this game? Absolutely. Um, so, one of the things about the Shattered World. Yeah, that tends to get people's attention. Yes. If you think you can do it, you probably can. We've tried to make the system, joking aside, we've tried to make the system as open as possible to player expression. So if you want to express that by trying to seduce the dragon, absolutely. Just be careful, because sometimes success can be bad too. Uh, yeah. So, I won't keep going into the different destinies, but you've got Strength, the Fool, the Sun, the Magician, the Moon, the Hanged Man, the Chariot, and the High Priest, High Priestess. Each destiny group is split into 4 tiers. Again, tier 1 is the weakest. Those are your basic, I've got these abilities. And then as you get more abilities in a specific destiny, you can get more powerful abilities. So here's where the balancing comes into play. In the Shattered World, you do not have hit points per se. Instead, we use 2 tracks, stamina and wounds. Stamina represents your ability to take a hit and just keep on walking. Yeah, somebody tried to punch me, but I'm a former boxer. I rolled a bit, took it on my shoulder. It stings, whatever. Give me a minute, I'll walk it off, right? Like the normal, oops, I bumped into something. It stings, but it's not enough to really cause any lasting pain kind of damage. Once your stamina hits 0, you begin taking wounds. And wounds are exactly what they sound like, actual long-lasting damage. Mm-hmm. One moment. Alright, sorry about that. So, wounds are actual long-lasting damage. That's where I've gotten physically stabbed or an arm has gotten broken, things like that. Your stamina is controlled by two things. Number one, your attribute, your endurance, right? If I'm more physically tough, I'm going to be able to take more damage. It's just the way it is. Each destiny ability that you get, each destiny category, has a stamina value associated with it. So the Magician Destiny only gives 2 stamina per destiny ability. Strength, by contrast, gives 4. As you start learning more destiny abilities, as you're embracing what makes you more than just a normal person, what makes you enhanced, your sense of purpose, your physical body begins changing and you become more durable. That's what increases your stamina. So, somebody that has spent their time embracing, again, the Magician Destiny just won't be as durable as somebody that's embracing the tactics and the abilities of the Strength Destiny. But to circle back, that brings to the balance. There is nothing that stops you. For example, say we're playing D&D, and I start as a rogue. I have to meet prerequisites to multi-class into fighter, and I have to give up a level in rogue to take a level in fighter instead. I then have to meet other prerequisites and do other things to take a level in wizard, blah blah blah. In the Shattered World, again, it's a classless system. If I chose my initial Destiny ability in Strength, and then later I decide, I kind of like this magic stuff. I want to learn that first ability in the Magician Destiny. Put your points into it. Go ahead. There's nothing stopping you. But once you've got your points in, you've got your Destiny ability. Right. Um, Hopefully we have a little bit of class. Every edition of the Shattered World will come with a little tuxedo. It's very classy. Um, One of the things you have to decide when it comes to Destiny abilities, do I pick up more low-ranking Destiny abilities that won't be as impactful, but by doing so gain more uses of Destiny abilities and more stamina? Or do I beeline for that tier 4 ability and get that once per day game changing I win button, only I can only use it once, and if I get hit back, I'm kind of screwed. Yes, exactly. So, yes and no, Tor. Officially, no, there is no difference. If I say classless system or a system without classes, technically that's the same. However, I try to always use a classless system to differentiate between other systems that don't technically have classes but do. A great example is Vampire the Masquerade from World of Darkness. Vampire the Masquerade technically is a classless system. When you make your character, you're a vampire, you choose your clan. Officially, the clans are not classes. However, because of the way they use the discipline system, their vampire special abilities, each clan is very much a class. caitiff don't count. Nobody likes the caitiff. Um, the caitiff or the Build-A-Bear of vampire. Tell me I'm wrong. Like, you can say wow, and that's fine, but tell me I'm wrong. They are! So, I don't know how much about vampire you know, Tor. Um, but in Vampire the Masquerade, again, you choose your clan. So you choose Bruja, or you choose Toreador, or you choose Ventru, whatever. If you choose Bruja, you get Potence, which is super strength. You get Celerity, which is super speed. And you get Presence, which is a super everybody love me ability. Bruja tend to use it for Intimidate. Now, the Bruja are not a class, but that's a barbarian. That's a barbarian. You've got super strength, which only applies to melee weapons and thrown weapons, so you do increase damage with it. You've got super speed, so you can close the distance, and you've got an intimidate to make the rabble back off while you take out the leader. You're a barbarian. The Tremere get blood magic. They get some other I can learn stuff abilities. They're a wizard. And then Caitiff are known as the clanless. Yes, exactly, Tor. That's what I'm talking about. Tor, that's exactly it. Um, that's why I try to specify between a classless system and a system without classes. Vampire is a system without classes, but yes, it is. In the Shattered World, we do have what we call organizations that you join at character creation, and I'll go over more in a minute on them. And while the organizations certainly encourage a play style, they don't, or encourage a mentality, they don't force you to play a certain way. If I go with SHI, Supernatural Hunters Incorporated, that are all about boom, bomb, slash, burn the unclean, whatever, and I want to play a medic, I'm not penalized for doing so. I'm not gimped for doing so compared to somebody that went with the healer clan, right? Like, there's nothing stopping me, and indeed, that's a very valid play style. Yes, the organizations do determine some of your starting abilities, but they don't force you to go a particular play style. Um, that was the difference I tried to do. And again, with Vampire, as an example, if I start as a Bruja and then want to learn non-Bruja abilities, I have to find a trainer. I have to potentially blood bond myself to that trainer. I have to then spend not only XP to learn that ability, but increased XP to learn that ability. So while the healer clan can absolutely teach me healing magic, for example, I will never be as good at it as them because I have to spend more XP to learn each ability than they do. In the Shattered World, it's not like that. If I start putting my abilities into, or my Destiny abilities into the Magician Destiny, and then later I decide, I kind of want to play a more melee magic play style like a Magus, so I'm going to put some points into my Strength Destiny. I'm not penalized because that wasn't my first Destiny. It cost me the same amount of XP. I'm just giving up the ability to continue putting those points into the Magician Destiny. That's the difference. Does that make sense? Okay. And yes, Super, that's exactly right. The Caitiff are, like I said, the Build-A-Bear a vampire. You don't have specified um, disciplines like the other clans do. You can pick whatever you want. You build your character. The problem is everybody treats you like hell because nobody likes Build-A-Bear in World of Darkness. I'm correct. So, let me get back. So, let's go ahead and talk about organizations since we brought them up. So, you remember me mentioning families with the capital F. Each family is basically a specific type of magical bloodline. Since time immemorial, they are the ones that have been basically controlling the world. Um, One of the family has a quote, for example, "We are not mere kings and queens. We're not that little." That's their mentality. Now, since the tears opened up and these enhanced have appeared, excuse me, since the tears have appeared, since the enhanced have appeared, different organizations have begun to take the front and center stage in world politics. There are at game launch there are going to be 8 organizations, each representing a different philosophy, a different ideal. Your character will join one of those organizations at character creation, and as you play, they can, if you choose, advance in rank for that organization. So, roughly speaking, we will be doing a deep dive on the different organizations at a later date, but the 8 organizations are the Ardor of the White Eye. They are, simply put, the magical Illuminati. Not every member of the families is a member of the Ardor of the White Eye, but every member of the Ardor of the White Eye is or was a member of the families. They are the political movers and excuse me, the political movers and shakers. They are the ones with the wealth, the power, the money, the rare spell components, etc. Next up is the Keepers of the Garden. They started as a Catholic organization similar to the Jesuits or the Dominicans. However, very quickly they kind of branched out. Their whole premise was in the Bible, we're commanded to be keepers of the garden, right? We're commanded to keep the world as pure as we can. Lots of other religions have that or a similar commandment. Why would I turn away a skilled gardener simply because we disagree on one small matter? The organization now is largely secular. You are just as likely to find a biologist among their membership as you are a priest, and their whole thing is conservation. The planet is constantly in danger, the planet is constantly in flux. We need to protect it. What's that? There's lands beyond these tears? Okay, we were commanded to be keepers of the whole garden, not just this one little section. Let's keep that area too. So, after that, you have Starlight Networks. Evil Amazon, or Amazon. So Starlight Networks is a organization. They are shopkeepers. We can get what you need, guaranteed. Just don't ask how it got here. If you need to buy boots, if you need to find training for what you can do as an enhanced, if you need to acquire rare material components, they're the ones you want to talk to. Supernatural Hunters Incorporated. Um, they are. There are basically two views on them. The uncharitable view is they are basically, what if I would have joined the military, but I didn't want to punch my drill sergeant in the face, was a person. The more charitable view is they are hard men and women that hunt the things that hunt people. And you will find characters in the world that believe both things. SHI, Supernatural Hunters Incorporated, their whole premise is the average man or woman cannot stand up against a vampire or a horde of zombies. And if I have 1,000 zombies and I kill 999 of them, what happens? 2 weeks later, I've got another 1,000 zombies. If I have 1,000 vampires and I kill 999 of them, what happens? A week later, I have 1,000 vampires again. So we're going to overkill because we don't have a choice. Hopefully, no civilians get caught up in that, but if they do, it's better than the alternative. Sorry. So after that, you have the morning after, and the morning after is spelled as in morning, like to mourn. So one of the important things about the Shattered World is that for those of you familiar with the modern fantasy genre, it's a long-standing trope that you have the modern stuff over here and then the fantasy stuff over here, and they do not interact. Dresden Files, for example, is a great example where the main character is a wizard and he advertises in the phone book, but his magic screws with technology around him. And because of that, he doesn't even have a water heater in his house because he doesn't want to risk it blowing up. That is not the case in the Shattered World. Magic magic and technology are basically the same. You can't get a toaster without it having at least a little bit of arcane power behind it. Yes, exactly, Super. Um, so, one of the things about the morning after, they are exorcists. With all of this magic and technology around, if a person dies without being properly mourned, their spirit can become agitated by all the power flowing around them and runs the risk of becoming a spirit, a wraith, a zombie, etc. The morning after are exorcists and professional mourners. When the homeless guy dies on the street, they're the ones that find him, find his body, take it to the nearest cemetery, perform last rites, do as much research as they can on who he was to try and give at least somewhat of a eulogy and lay his spirit to rest so that it doesn't harm other people. Of the organizations, thank you. And welcome to the chat, Ba Visual Art. Is it Ba Visual, BAH Visual? All right. So that's the morning after. Next up, you have the Safe Haven Project. They are a United Nations organization. Their basic premise is time and time and time again, the world has come close to the brink of destruction. So, yes, to the last part. Supernatural entities have always existed. Um, always. They've become more rare, but they've always existed. Since the tears opened, they have become much more prevalent. And that's one of the reasons why in universe nobody is quite sure, are these things coming from the tears? We've always had, chupacabras and whatever. Are they coming through the tears? Are they being created by the tears from the minds of the people around them? Are they just they had been hiding and now something in these tears are drawing them out? What is going on? That is one of the mysteries that players will be tasked with solving. Yep, that's what I'm trying to figure out how to do. And banned. I believe I did that correctly. Yay, I did something right. Take that, ex-wife. Anyway, joking aside, so I am again bouncing between the chat and my notes, so if you guys see a bot, let me know and I will ban them ASAP. I may be new to this, but I'm not quite that new to how everything works. No time for that shit. So, um, super. Did I answer your question on the adversaries? All right. So, getting back, the Safe Haven project. So, the Safe Haven project again. Cheers, I appreciate it. Yay, distracted mind. But Safe Haven Project, their whole premise is the world is constantly on the brink of annihilation and humanity is on the brink of extinction because some idiot is upset at some other idiot and we're one Cold War away from the nukes dropping. 1 second, everybody. What's up? Yeah, you know how to go get a drink. All right. Basically, we're one step away from some idiot pushing the nuke button. What we need is a place where humanity can survive without the risk of one idiot destroying us all. These tears, with them being pocket dimensions, represent a unique ability, a unique opportunity to create just what the project is called, a safe haven where humanity can survive if the worst happens. So that is their overwhelming mandate to go through these tears to explore and to create an area where humanity can thrive. Now, like any other government organization, I won't get into politics, but they can absolutely be corrupted and manipulated. But so can any of the organizations. So, next up is the necessary. Now, the necessary are in a weird position. If you ask people about the necessary today, The necessary are number one, composed of the have-nots of magical society. Um, they are not the families, they are the okay, I've got this magical ability, I can change a TV with my mind, right? Like I can change channels. Wow, that's awesome. That's helpful. And because of that, I'm forever stuck being a janitor because I don't have the magical power to be worth something to the ruling class. The necessary today run a lot of soup kitchens. They engage in a lot of protests. Um, Regardless of political affiliation, you are just as likely to use examples from our world, not to get political, but you are just as likely to see a necessary at a Tea Party rally as you are a BLM rally. It's they tend to transcend politics. They are all about the class, if that makes sense. But to most people, the necessary are the ones who hold job programs, the ones who try to help. The organization started with the first convicts that were shipped from England to Australia back in the 1700s. And they were very much a freedom fighter terrorist organization. The system is broken. We're not going to be able to fix it, so get the flamethrower. There are rumors that that is still what the necessary does, rumors that the necessary very much denies, and we will go over that more in the organization deep dive at a later date. The final organization is the Vae Victis. So, the Vae Victis genuinely believe that they are on the path to deityhood. They believe that by becoming enhanced, they are no different from your or give me 1 minute, guys. You may lose me for just a second, but give me 1 moment. All right, mic check real quick. Can everybody still hear me okay? Awesome. All right, so that problem was fixed. So, the Vae Victis genuinely believe that they are on the path to ascension, the path to deityhood. They are your modern day paladins, your modern day Pericles, your modern day. I'm blanking on non Greek mythology demigods, but you get the point. They're the ones that genuinely believe they're about to become gods. They are, of course, all incredibly humble, as the type of people that believe they are deities are, tending to be. I said that with a straight face. I'm rather proud. Ah, Wukong. How could I forget Son Goku? But yes, they genuinely believe that that's their goal. That's what they are. So those are the organizations, and there are merits that you can only learn from the organizations. But I don't think I explained that earlier, and even if I did, new people have popped into the stream. When I say, excuse me, when I say merits, for my D&D familiar, think feats. Merits are basically individualized tricks and abilities that you have picked up that other people haven't. So anyone may know how to use a pistol, but you've learned how to shoot much further, or you've learned how to do a weaver stance that most people haven't. Things like that. There are merits that require membership in an organization. When the game launches, there will. We're still working on testing this. It probably will not make the core rulebook the ability to switch organizations. That being said, there will be cross training and other similar abilities. And then the ability to change organizations will be in later books. It's what I do. So before I move on, does anybody have questions about organizations? Or just anything I've gone over in general? Super, I know you had something you wanted to bring up. So there are rumors going around about multiple organizations doing that. Specifically SHI, Supernatural Hunters Incorporated, and the Ardor of the White Eye. There are less credible rumors going around that Starlight Networks is also engaged in that. And frankly, yeah, those are the three big ones. Now, that actually brings me to something I want to specify. And this is mildly ranty. The Shattered World will have an overarching meta plot. So once the core rulebook comes out, we will be putting out 5 campaign settings, each one advancing the overall meta plot. That being said, your home game is your home game. Even though I just said, yeah, SHI and Starlight Networks and the Ardor of the White Eye are the big 3 that are rumored to be doing this. If you want to tell a story at your home game where the Necessary are doing it, or where the Morning After are doing it, I am not going to come to your home and smack your wrist and say, no, you're playing it wrong, right? Like, that's not going to happen. That's your game, dude. Like, you've paid me my money. I'm good. Run your game the way you want. Tell the story your group wants to tell. End rant. But, so does that answer your question, Super? Excuse me. Awesome. Any other questions from anyone else? I'll give just a minute. Thank you. One of the big design challenges for us was to try and make each organization unique and make each organization valid while not making them forced. By that I mean, like, I'm playing a rifleman. I have to go SHI because they're the gun stuff people, and If I go anyone else, I'm wrong. We're like we very much tried to balance that. And so far, it looks like we succeeded. All right. So, moving on, I want to talk about encounter design. Yes, switching organizations. Yes, that is something we're working on. So one of the things we tried to do, and this is game design in general, a lot of people conflate the words crunchy and complicated. And I get where they're coming from, but I don't think that should be the case. A crunchy system is one that has a lot of numbers and it has a lot of merits and it has a lot of rules, etc. Evil Amazon would never poach employees. How dare? Absolutely. God. Anyway, a complicated system has rules for the sake of having rules. One example I use is actions per turn. So in D&D, for example, my turn consists of a standard action, a move action, a swift action, an intermediate action, possible free actions, a reaction, Bob's action. Like, there's no reason for that. And then drawing a sword is a move action, unless I have an ability called quick draw, which makes it a whatever action. Unless I also have a base attack bonus of +1, then I can move and draw. And it's complicated, and there's no reason for it. So with the Shattered World, we just went with actions. If you want to draw your gun and fire your gun, that's 2 actions. If you want to slam a door closed and hold it while you pull out your gun and then shoot at somebody else, that's 3 actions. Use your actions the way you want. We did a lot of stripping down and a lot of examining all the key components. Why I bring that up is because we're doing the same thing with switching organizations. Narratively, I love it. I very much want to include it. From a this is the core rule book, the systems within it need to be able to get people to be able to play the game reliably and answer questions. I We're working on finding a way that isn't too complicated, if that makes sense. Right. Evil Amazon would never do that. They would never. Their lawyer is going to be reaching out to you soon, Super. That's defamation. You can't prove that. But switching organizations, we've batted around a couple different ideas. If it doesn't make the core rulebook, it will make a later book. It's definitely something that's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, if that makes sense. So, let's talk character design. Or not character, wow. Encounter design. One of the things I always follow is what I call the rule of 3. Knock on wood, no copyright infringement yet. I am not a lawyer, and their lawyer is definitely not a guy in a black suit with sunglasses and a Glock. No, not at all. Not at all. It's a much better weapon than a Glock. Anyway, um, Ow. Yeah, no copyright infringement yet, God willing. Knock on all the wood. Hammer of the law, yes. If that's the kind of story you want to tell, you can absolutely tell that in the Shattered World. So one of the things I bring up, the Tears very obviously take a front and central role to the story. That being said, if you want to play a campaign, play a game where the Tears aren't there, and instead you're a bunch of for-profit lawyers hired by Starlight Networks, and you're going after other organizations, you can absolutely play that kind of game. Based on your services, you've been given access to this island off the shores of Sweden, this little uninhabited island. You now have to explore it because, for whatever blah 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 plot reason, satellites just don't reach it. So now you've got navigation mode kicked in. SVU Shattered Worlds, absolutely. That may in fact be copyright infringement, but joking aside, you can absolutely tell that kind of story if that's what you want. Again, yes, the default assumption is we're going to be talking about going through tears and building settlements there. There's nothing that says you can't say, okay, you guys have access to this island. It's in the middle of the Pacific and it's going to be your home base, and you can absolutely start bringing people there, right? Like Diego Garcia is a real thing. You can absolutely play that style of game if you want. But encounter building. Speaking personally, when I'm designing an encounter, one of the things I always follow is what I call the rule of three. For every encounter, I design three different ways to solve it. And when I say encounter, I don't necessarily mean combat. Could be a puzzle, could be a hazard, could be whatever. Could be a heist, could be trying to convince the lawyer not to sue, right? Like, that's a valid encounter for this purpose. When you're designing it as the narrator, always design three ways around it. And then just be aware that your players are going to come up with a completely unhinged fourth way. Never design your encounters to just be, this is the combat encounter, and you are going to have to run in guns blazing. They're all seducing the dragon. Right. It's an old joke, right? The DM yeah. The dungeon master may decide that this is a heist, but the players decide whether it's the Mission Impossible theme song or the Benny Hill theme song playing. Right, Time Glitch. That's absolutely valid. Like, I don't want to get jury duty. You don't want to get jury duty. If there's no courthouse, there can be no jury duty. That's just science. Right, or to quote Canada, it's never a war crime the first time. Um, yeah. The Geneva suggestion list. But, what? Don't wow that. The Geneva Convention was written because of Canada. We all know that. So, just something to keep in mind when you're designing your encounters. Players are players. Chase money glitch. God. So, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Back in the day, I ran a game, and my players were a paladin. This was a Pathfinder game. My players were a paladin, right? Sword and shield, you know, tank and spank paladin. A synthesis summoner who was all about summoning this creature around him like a living mech suit. And then a gunslinger. A cowboy hat, guns, spurs, straight out the Wild West, yeehaw, ma'am, gunslinger. And they were exploring a dungeon, and they come across a sleeping cryohydra. And the paladin and the synthesis summoner immediately, very quietly, begin arguing with one another. Do we kill the thing? Do we not kill the thing? It's asleep. We can just walk by. Yeah, but I don't want it behind us, and I want the XP, blah, blah, blah. Arguing. For 20 minutes in real life, they argued. And the gunslinger just sat there and watched his two longtime friends. And after 20 minutes, again in real time, they both turned and looked at the gunslinger. And the gunslinger goes, "Well, boys, when I was growing up on the ranch, my father only taught me how to do one thing. Break horses, yeehaw." Turns, runs, and jumps on the damn Hydra. Then the player very calmly turns and looks at me and says, "So, what's the ride check to break a Hydra?" I don't know, but we're going to find out. Right, like, I had no idea that was going to happen. And we jury-rigged something up. And he ended up breaking the Hydra, and legends later spoke of the gunslinger that rode into battle on a cryohydra. And it was great. But that's something you need to think about when you're designing encounters. Always remember that your players are going to come up with the most unhinged crap you can think of. Someone is going to try to seduce the dragon. Someone is going to try to just randomly roll persuasion to try and convince the mayor they are their long-lost child. It's going to happen. Work that in. Let them try. They can fail. They can fail beautifully. If they succeed, that doesn't mean they automatically get what they want. It means they've started that process. Let the story flow where it flows. Make sure when you're designing it, you can come up with different ways around it. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so I know this was originally scheduled till noon. Unfortunately, my daughter is letting me know she wants lunch a little early. So I am going to open it up now to questions for the next few minutes. Any questions you guys have about the Shattered World, feel free to ask now and I will answer them. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., we are going to be doing the adversary system, where we will be going more in depth into how the enemies that your players will be fighting work, what they can do, what they can't do, etc. Here is where I would be playing. Yes, thank you. I forgot to say that. That is 9 a.m. Eastern Time, like Super said. I am on the East Coast, so 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I believe Twitch automatically updates the schedule for your own time zone. Don't quote me on that. But yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. So yeah, if you are on Twitch, the schedule will show based on your time zone. Um, for those that aren't looking at that right now, it is 9 a.m. Eastern time. All right. I would like to thank everybody who has come here. Um, Again, I greatly appreciate it. This was our second stream. Give me one moment. If you go to facebook.com, Mr. Bites, that is our main Facebook. And there you can find a link to our YouTube where previous videos are held, our website, and all of our different socials. I will be posting that in just a moment because I can apparently not type and talk at the same time. Cheers, same to you. All right, everybody, you take care, be safe, and I will hopefully see y'all tomorrow. Take care.